Shalom and welcome back to Reboot the Root. I'm so glad you've joined me back here once again as we continue on our journey to truth. Perhaps you've just had your eyes and your ears and your hearts open to God's calling through His Holy Spirit to show you things that you didn't know before, wonders that you've never seen, and truths that you've never heard. And perhaps you've heard them among your Hebrew roots friends. Suppose you've heard them on the internet, and so now you're looking for the answers to your questions. But here at Reboot the Root, we are questioning the answers, meaning that we don't accept truth unless we read the Bible for ourselves. And so that's what we're here at Reboot the Root. I'm here to educate you on a beginner's level of how to be a Torah explorer in a relationship with Yeshua HaMashiach. So welcome here. If this is your first time, this is a safe place to be, because we are not, or not we, but I am not preaching anything except other than truth. So we're investigating bits and pieces of our faith and our doctrine to see how they hold up to Scripture. And so thank you for joining me, and I want to say a special thank you to everyone out there who have recently subscribed. And so I thank you for subscribing to this channel, and I also want to say a thank you out to all of you who've joined me for the series that we're in, which is called Excuse My Hebrew. And in this series, we are taking a look at the Hebrew language. We are learning how to read Hebrew. Now, we're not learning how to speak Hebrew. That's a different thing. But to read Hebrew is relatively easy, especially if we're going to stick to just the Scriptures, okay? So we have the Old Testament that we can read in Hebrew, but first we have to know what we're reading. We have to know what words mean. We have to know what the letters mean. And so in this series, we're taking a look at pictographs, Paleo-Hebrew, and more relative to us, the modern Hebrew. Okay, so after we're done, you should be able to practice reading your Hebrew. You could actually find a Hebrew text and start practicing your reading. Now, what you'll find is you know what the word spells, but you may not know what it means, and that you're going to have to learn what each word means and commit it to memory, and more importantly, use it. When you use Hebrew words in as much as you can in your life, you will be able to pick it up more easily. And also, we have the tool of the pictograph Hebrew, which will tell us what the letters mean, and in turn, they'll tell us what words mean. So, anyway, we're here on episode 12 of Excuse My Hebrew, and this week we're going to be studying the letters of Kaf and Lamed. Kaf and Lamed. All right? But before we go on there, we want to do a quick, brief review of what we covered in episode 11. And if you haven't watched all of the previous episodes, I encourage you to watch those. Do a binge watch all of them so you can get up to date on where we've been and where we're going. All right? So in the last series 11, we were covering the Hebrew letters Tet and Yud. Tet and Yud. So let's cover that real quick. So here on the screen we have the Hebrew the Hebrew letter Tet, okay? And it's the 9th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So it has a numerical value of 9, all right? And so Tet or Tef, it can mean a basket, a snake, or a womb. And so if you look at the picture again of the Tet, it kind of looks like any of those. It looks like a basket, it looks like a snake, or it looks like a womb, okay? And so in looking at the Paleo and pictograph Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew and the pictograph Hebrew look very similar to each other, okay? And so on our screen, we see the pictograph, and we also see the Paleo Hebrew. And in the Paleo Hebrew, it means more of a wheel. And you can see on the picture, it does indeed look like a wheel, okay? And then we went on to our 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the yod or the yod. Yod or the yud. It just depends on, it just depends on circumstances and where it came from and who's doing the teaching and those kind of things. So I prefer to use the word yud, okay? Yud is actually the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's also referred to as iota, which is a Greek word meaning a small amount, okay? So that's the yud or yod. It kind of looks like an apostrophe in English language. And then when we looked at yud, we noticed that it is the 10th letter, and it is it has a meaning of an arm or a closed hand, and its numerical value is 10, okay? So in looking also at the paleopictograph Hebrew, we have their equivalents here I have on the screen, meaning a hand, okay? Yud means a hand, and it's interesting, we see that as the very first letter in the name of Yahweh, if that's how you prefer to say it. Yod He Vav He, in my estimation, is pronounced Yahweh, and the first letter in that is Yud. Okay, so Yud means a hand, has a numerical value of 10. So now we move on to new material we have this week in episode 12, and like as promised, we're going to study the letters Kaf and Lamed. Kaf and Lamed. All right, so let's move on with those letters. So first of all, we're going to look at the letter Kaf, okay? So here we have the letter in the modern form of Kaf. This is, when I say the modern form, I mean the one you're going to be looking at. The one that you'll see over in Israel if you visit. The one that you'll see if you're able to get Hebrew text or Hebrew Bible. You'll see this as the modern form. Now you can get Bibles that are in the Paleo-Hebrew form. I haven't seen one in the pictographs yet, but I have seen them in the Paleo-Hebrew one. So on the screen here I have the letter Kaf, but there's also a sister letter to it. Remember we covered the bet and the vet where it had the dogish in the middle? Well, here's we have another dogish eligible letter. So if it's Kaf, it doesn't have the dogish in the middle. But if it does the dogish in the middle, it's called Haf. Haf. Okay, so you have to be careful in listening that we don't get the Kaf mixed up with the Kof. Okay, so that's a different letter. So not Kof, but Kaf and Haf, and it all depends on if it has a dogish or not. If it's a dogish, it's a Haf, and that is the 11th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it means a palm. A palm, okay. And it has a numerical value of 20. Okay, so when we get past the Yud, the numerical values now increase by tens until we get up to 90, and then after that we go into increments of 100. And to get, like, say we wanted to say 21 or 22, we would add other Hebrew letters to the Kaf to be able to distinguish the ones place of the number. When we have the tens place, like as a 20, then you'd have a ones place, like 21 or 22. You would add another Hebrew letter to indicate increments of 1 in each tenth. Meaning, like if we had 20, 21, 22, up to 29, you would have the Kaf plus another letter to go all the way up to the next letter, which would be the Lamed. And so Lamed would mean 30. So looking here on the screen, we have the paleo and the pictograph forms of Kaf, and it still means palm. So we have either Kaf, K-A-F, or Haf, K-H-A-F. And again, that depends on if we have the dogish or not. So here on the screen we have the pictograph and the paleo, and it's good to know that in the paleo, Kaf means a palm. Means a palm, okay? So now we want to look at some words that use that use the Haf and the Kaf, okay? So let's take a look at some of those words. All right, so these aren't really biblical words, but they're words to use so that we can illustrate how the letters are used in a word. So first one we have is called ochel, and that means food, and that's spelled with an aleph and a vav that gives us the o sound, and then we have the kaf that gives us the chaf sound, ochel, and then followed by the lamed. Ochel means food. Then our next one is going to be using the kaf and not the haf, and it's a word called kiv, and that means pain, and that's spelled with a kaf, a aleph, and then a vet. Okay, a vet, kaf, aleph, vet. And then our next word is kin, K-E-N. That means yes. Yes is kin. So that is a kaf followed by a final noon. Okay, and next episode we'll get into the final noon. Then we have malchuf. That means realm. Okay, malchuf. So that's spelled with a mem, followed by a lamed, which we'll be getting into next, followed by the haf, and then the vav, which gives a vowel point indicator, and then ends with a tav, malkuth, mem, lamed, haf, vav, and tav. And then our last word that you've probably all heard of is kosher. Kosher, that means fit. So if you're eating something that was designed by our Creator for you to eat, that means kosher, okay? So that is spelled with a kaf and a sheen, and followed by a resh. 3 simple letters, kaf, sheen, and resh, and that's kosher. Okay, very good. We've talked a little bit about final forms of letters, and these are called soffits. So I want to read you something from eteacherhebrew.com. It says the Hebrew alphabet has 22 letters. 5 Hebrew letters are formed differently when they appear as the last letter of a word. So we see there are quite a few words that have a final form of a letter. These forms are called soffit, and they're known as final forms. The 5 letters sound the same as their non-soffit cousins. So that just means that there are 5 Hebrew letters that have a final form of it, okay? Like we have a final mem and we have a final kaf, and things like that. And they always go at the end of a word. You never see them in the middle of a word or at the beginning of one, okay? So those 5 soft letters are kaf, mem, noon, fe, and sadi. And fe could also be pei too, okay? So let's say that again. The 5 soffit letters are kaf, mem, noon, fe, and sadi, okay? And that comes from eteacherhebrew.com. So you have to make sure when you're looking at this, looking at a final kaf, it can't be confused with the dalet or the resh, okay? So looking here on the screen, I have a picture of what a final haf would look like. It has a longer tail than the resh and the dalet. So we're looking for that really long, elongated tail that goes beyond an invisible line that all these letters sit on. So it should not be confused with the dalet or the resh, and it has a longer tail than they do. It goes quite far down, okay? So now we want to turn our attention to the lamed letter, the lamed. It's a very distinguished letter that does not look like anything else. It's like one that really stands out. It's kind of like the sheen letter. It stands out too, and you don't get these letters confused with any other letter. So this is the lamed. It's got kind of a crooked look to it, and that's actually what it means in pictograph Hebrew. It's the crook of a shepherd. It's a shepherd staff. That's what it means, a shepherd staff. And so lamed turns out to be the 12th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. and it has a numerical value of 30. Okay, so we're increasing in value as we go up in tens now. From the Yud, we start increasing from 20 to 30 to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then at that letter, then it starts turning in increments of 100. Okay, so this is the 12th letter. It's a gematria equivalent of 30. Okay, so gematria is interesting to study because we can study words and they know they have a numerical value and they will mean something of great importance. Okay, so anyway, this is the letter Lamed. And then we look here on the screen, we have pictograph and Paleo-Hebrew equivalents. And so it kind of has a kind of funny look about looking like a stick of some sort. In fact, in Paleo-Hebrew, it actually means a goad, which is a prodding stick. So this is Lamed. And then we also look at the pictograph version of that as well. So we will know what Lamed means. It means a prodding stick, or it means a staff, or something like that, something you control something or someone with. Okay, so that's Lamed. So now we want to look at what are some words that use Lamed. Okay, so I think you'll find these words very useful because they're all in the Bible. Okay, so these will be fun for you to look down and study, and really after time you'll be able to recognize them by sight. Okay, so yeah, you will. After you've gotten used to them a lot, you'll know to recognize them by sight. So here's some Hebrew words that use Lamed. So the first word we're going to go over, I'm sure you know of or heard of, it's called shalom. Shalom means peace. And it's interesting that it also means hello or goodbye. Okay? So this is shalom, which is spelled with a sheen. And you notice that the sheen has the dot on the right side of the sheen. That makes it a sheen. If it was on the left side, it would be called seen. Not sin, but seen. So we have sheen followed by a lamed followed by a vav, which gives it the O sound, and we end with a final mem. So you see that final mem? It's different than mem because the final mem is closed up, where the mem has an open gate in it. Okay. And then our next word we're going to go over, I'm sure everyone's heard this word, is called Israel. Israel, okay? So that is spelled with a seen, a resh, an aleph, and a lamed, okay? And how we get Israel out of sheen is you have the vowel point there under the sheen. You see those two dots, those vertical two dots, those are called a shiva. They're called a shiva, and they give you the S sound, like an E sound. That's Israel. Then we go to another familiar word called Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim. And in English, we would say Jerusalem, okay? And you need to know that there's no J's in Hebrew, okay? I hope I'm not the first one to tell you that there's no J's in Hebrew. J's are in English, but today we call it Jerusalem. But if we were to talk about it in Israel, we would say Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim. So that's spelled with a yud and a resh, followed by a vav, followed by the sheen. Okay, see the sheen has the dot on the right, followed by the lamed, then the yud, and then the final mem. So we have another final mem there. That's Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, you can also just call it Jerusalem, okay? Then our final word we want to go over is called lechem. Lechem, okay? So that's like a guttural sound, lechem. And that means bread, okay? So if you have bread, you have lechem. And so that's spelled with a lamed, a het, and a final mem, okay? So that's lechem. Well, that's all the time that we have to cover our two letters of Lamed and Kaf. And next week we are going to be covering the letters of Mem and Nun. Mem and Nun, okay? So I want to make sure you join us for that episode as we continue to excuse my Hebrew And if you're not already a subscriber, would you please hit that subscribe button? You can join the rest of the subscribers who will get all the notifications of all the videos that are be coming out in this series, as well as the next series. So if you've liked this video, please hit that like button. And if you've already pressed that button, thank you for liking this video, and feel free to share this on your social media, okay? And if I could be of any help to you, if I can answer any questions, and you just want to talk, you can send me an email to reboottherootjourney@gmail.com. And I'd love to see a message from you, and I'd like to hear your comments, and I'd like to answer your questions. Shalom until episode 13.